So you should all be seeing a screen now on the presentation, which is a login screen for Oracle Fusion. At the time that all of our vendors receive their login credentials, which is apparently it's imminent. I believe that a few people may have already received this, and pending the confirmation that functionality is working for those vendors, we will be ensuring that all of our login credentials are sent to the uh, contact person on file for that vendor. So once you have your credentials, you will receive the website address for Oracle Fusion, and this is the screen that you will come to. Um, Upon initially entering your login credentials, you will be prompted with a screen to change your password and to create challenge questions and submit answers for your challenge questions. That is all information that is unique to your login and is able for you to update through your own login through Supplier Portal. We will be using our test database this morning, and so you will see that there will be some information and data in this test database that may or may not be accurate, but will be fully functional in our production database, which we are currently working in. For the purposes of this morning's class, I will be using Yolanda um, because she is one of the vendors that we had set up in test for Supplier Portal. So I'm going to go ahead and sign in. And once you sign in, you'll see that you'll come up to this page. This is your home page. The orange and red bars across the top of the screen will not appear that way in the production system. This is only for the test system. As you see at the very top, it does say here, this is the test instance for training only. Up here at the top on the right hand side, you've got a few icons. The home button will be where you need to go to actually enter into Supplier Portal and perform all the functions that you will be doing. The favorites and recent items, the watch lists, are just for your own use. The notifications icon, this one here, the little bell, will alert you whenever you have any type of new submission or information in the system. As you see on this one, there's a little red 4 that's stating that I have 4 new notifications. You can click on this and it'll bring up what the new notifications are. And then if you'd like, you can click on these and it'll actually bring up whatever that submission is. Then you have a couple more icons here, accessibility and help. And then you also have over here, this is where you would actually sign out whenever you're done with your session. If you click on your name, it gives you sign out, and then it gives you some other things that you can do for personalization. And I'll leave that to you to mess and play with that as you want. You can do things like set your preferences to a different language if you have somebody who is more comfortable using, say, perhaps Spanish. That is available for you to do in this area right here. So we'll go ahead and go to the home page. And when you go to the home page, you will see, again, this screen is red. In the production system, this screen is actually going to be blue. You have 4 icons here: Supplier Portal, Getting Started, Marketplace, and Work List. Really, the only one that you will be using is the Supplier Portal icon. Getting Started, I believe, has a couple of little quick videos or click-through training things that are just basic information for actually Oracle Fusion. But what we go through today will be much more beneficial to you. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the Supplier Portal link, icon, and that'll bring us up to what we'll call your portal homepage. Over here on the left-hand side are links to all of the functions that you will be utilizing in Supplier Portal. You can scroll down in here and you'll see that it goes all the way down to the last one being Manage Profile. We're going to go line by line through these and explore the various functions that you have within each one, as well as identify functions that you will not be using in Oracle Fusion. I will let you know that we have been recommended by Oracle that the preferred browser for use in navigating Oracle Fusion is Mozilla Firefox. Per their recommendation, they have told us that this web-based program functions a little bit more efficiently in Firefox. I have also tested this system in Internet Explorer, Google Chrome, and in Safari for Mac, which is actually what I'm using today. The functions are all there. Sometimes the speed is just a little bit less, but I have not come across any issues where anything did not work based on the internet browser that I was using. So we'll go ahead and just jump right in. Over here on the left-hand side, you see that these tasks all have headings and then functions within. So under orders, the first one is manage orders. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. This function will be where the supplier has the ability to go into a specific purchase order and make changes to that purchase order. For example, if you receive a purchase order and that purchase order has an incorrect price on it, you have the ability to go in and edit the pricing and submit that for a change. You have the ability to edit quantity, and you have the ability to enter promise dates on the purchase order. Once you enter this portion of the portal, you'll see here we're in Manage Orders. You can look up by a specific purchase order number, or you can search all purchase order numbers. If you have a specific purchase order number that you want to work on, you enter it right here in the order field, and you would just click here and enter your purchase order number. If you just want to view all purchase orders, click on the search button, and the system will bring up every purchase order that is currently in our system for this vendor. As you see, there are several here for this vendor, and we can continue to scroll down. And pardon me one second, I need to make one slight adjustment to my system. All right, you can scroll down, and the system will continue to upload more and more purchase orders as you scroll down. I will point out one small detail. If you notice, these first two purchase orders listed here have the letters PO in front of a string of numbers. In our new system, which is many of you may have already started to see purchase orders that resemble this, the PO is actually part of the alphanumeric naming for a purchase order. As you see here on the third line, previously our purchase orders only included 6 digits. There were no letters. So please note that purchase orders moving forward, including invoicing, need to include the letters PO in front of them. Over here on the left-hand side, you'll see that several of these purchase orders have a small blue icon with the letter I in front of it, or included in it, excuse me. That indicates that there is some type of information on that purchase order. If I click on it or hover over it, it'll show me that a change order is pending. Whenever you make a change on an order, such as changing a price, changing a quantity, or adding a promise date, the system creates what we call a change order. If there is a pending change order on a purchase order, you cannot submit another change order until the first change order has been addressed by the buyer. The options for addressing that are either to approve or reject a change order submitted by a vendor. If the change order is approved, the process moves along and you continue on with processing the order on your end. If the change order is rejected, then a dialogue needs to be opened between the vendor and the buyer to determine the course of action to resolve that issue. So I'm going to go ahead and find a purchase order down here that has not had a change order submitted on it at this point. And I'm just going to select one here at random. I'm going to try to find one that has multiple line items on it. This is a nice big order, so that one should work well for us. So I'm just going to click on the purchase order number, and the purchase order will be opened for us. This is what our purchase orders look like in the system. And anyone who has received any of our new purchase orders, you are familiar with how they look on your end, but I will show you momentarily what they look like. So here's all the header information. Basically, it has our information, CFI Resorts Management, which of course, as most of you know, is the parent company for Westgate Resorts. Supplier information, the order total, some information regarding the terms. If there's any notes and attachments to the order, they would be listed here in this section. Sometimes your buyers may enter a note to supplier on an order, and that would show up right here. And then if we scroll down, we start to see the line items that are actually on this purchase order. Now, this purchase order appears to have quite a few items on it. I'm not sure exactly how many, but we can scroll all the way to the bottom and we see that there's actually 17 line items on this purchase order, including the last one for freight charges. At this point, I'll go ahead and open the PDF of this purchase order, if it works. Hopefully it will. And here you see what our purchase orders actually look like. So you see it has the header information there at the top. And I'll scroll down. You'll see the buyer information, terms and conditions, and then we actually get into the actual purchase order itself. So up here at the top has the purchase order number, the order date, change order revision date, if there are any, and the order total. Again, more header information, the sold to, the supplier, the shipped to, the bill to. And then we actually get into the line items of the order. As you see, it has the item description, the item price, the quantity of that item, and then the extended total for that line item. And if we scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see that we have the total for the entire purchase order listed right down here. Another nice feature on our purchase orders, which the PDF is what you'll be receiving when you actually receive your email of our purchase orders. These PDFs will be contained within a zip file attached to the email. When you open it up, it actually has a link right here that allows you to click to go to Supplier Portal. Very convenient function for when you're remote, if you are accessing this on your phone or tablet or laptop, and you may not have the Supplier Portal link saved in whatever device you're using, you can actually click here and it will take you to the login page for Supplier Portal at that point. So it's just a nice little added feature that we've included on our purchase orders. So I'll go back to the purchase order itself now, and we will begin the process of actually making a change to this purchase order. If this purchase order has line items on it that you want to make changes to, you will navigate to the Actions button, click, and select Edit. At that point, the system will open a change order. And as you see, it's saying this will create a change order on the document. Do we want to continue? And I will say yes. If you inadvertently did this and you do not wish to create a change order, just click no, and you will return to the purchase order screen. So this is just going to take just a moment. This is a web-based program, so please understand that there could be some lag time as the web program is accessed. Now this purchase order has been opened into a change order. Up here at the top, you will see this description with one asterisk next to it. One asterisk in this system means that it is required information. In this field, we are asking that our vendors supply as much accurate information as possible with regards to the change order that they're processing. If you're making price changes to multiple lines, we ask that you provide us all of the line items that you're making changes on. If you're making quantity changes, again, please indicate the line items that quantity changes are being made on. And if you're only entering promise dates, please just enter something to the effect of provide promise date. If you do not enter information in this field when you go to submit your change order, that you will receive an error message. I will show you, I will not enter information in here at this time so that you can see what that error message will look like. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll down, and I'm going to find the line item that I want to make a change to. for this example, I'm going to just make a change to line item number 1. Here you'll see the fields that can be updated will be shown with a white box like this. If the field is blue, as you see here and here, that means that item is not updatable. So I'm going to enter a price change. So I'm going to say that this vendor has actually had a price decrease on this item. So instead of $13.90, we're going to say that it's $12.90. If I wanted to change the quantity, again, you would do it here. Per our experience, the times when it may be most likely that you would be changing a quantity would be if it's an item that you ship only by case size, but is entered on our purchase orders by the each. For example, if line 1 was 80 items to a case, maybe I would want to change the quantity on here to 80. And then in my notes, I would perhaps enter something to the effect of change quantity on line 1 per case quantity, or something to that effect. Now, if you scroll to the right just a little bit, you'll see a column here that says promise date. This is a function that individual buyers will communicate with their vendors on how they would like this addressed. There are some buyers who want this information entered on every line every time. There are some buyers who may not necessarily require this information. I would suggest that you open a line of communication with the buyers that you work with within Westgate Resorts to determine how you would like this to be addressed when you are working within this system. If they are items that have long lead times, if they are custom items, if they are items that typically do not have a long lead time but are perhaps on a back order or will have a long lead time in this instance, it is my suggestion that you definitely enter a promise date in this field. If you click in here, you'll notice it comes up with the format. You can either type in your promise date or you can click on the small calendar icon to the right of the field. I'm going to just type in here. I'm going to say that I'm going to promise date this for June 18th. And again, if you click on the small calendar icon, it will actually bring a pop-up calendar and you can just click on your date there. If you want to make additional changes, you would just find the line that you want to make additional changes on. I'm going to say I want to make a change on line 4. I click on that line and you see that again it opens up the fields that are able to be edited. So I'm going to change my price on this line. Let's just say I'm going to change it to $8. So once you've made all the changes that you need to, you would actually want to go ahead and save. And as you see, the error message that I alluded to earlier has populated. You see here that an error of value is required for this field. So at that point, I would want to put in my information. I'm going to say I have a price change on line 1 and 4. And promise, pardon my typing, promise date on line 1. Then I can click save again. And you see up here at the top, it actually tells you what has changed on the purchase order as far as value. We have increased the dollar amount of this purchase order by $70 between the two changes that we made. And then I will click submit. As long as everything was entered correctly, you will get a pop-up that says the change order 1 for purchase order whichever that you were working on was submitted for approval. At that point, the buyer who issued this purchase order will receive notification through our system and via email that a change order has been submitted on one of their purchase orders. At that point, they will review the change order and either accept or reject. If they reject the purchase order, they will enter notes. There's a function where it allows for notes to be entered. They will enter whatever reason for that they are rejecting the change order and then click submit. Again, if it's accepted, you will receive notification that the change order has been accepted and you move along with the process. And if the change order has been rejected, at that point, a dialogue will need to be opened between the buyer and the vendor. So I'm going to click OK. And that is how we are allowing our vendors to make changes on line items on our purchase order. At this point, we are not allowing vendors to add any line items to purchase orders. If you have a freight amount that is going to be charged on your purchase order, most of our vendors that we have freight with, we know ahead of time that we will have freight, even though we may not know the dollar amount. And we often enter a freight line onto our purchase order. As you see down here, this PO has a freight line on it. If the purchase order has a freight line on it at the time that you receive it originally, it should have a quantity of 1 and a dollar amount of $1. If you know your freight charges at the time you're confirming your order, go ahead and make an adjustment to the freight line at that point and put your dollar amount in, and then in the description, just enter the line for the freight. For this example, it would be line 17, and I would enter information saying freight amount entered on line 17. As long as your buyer understands and accepts the dollar amount for your freight, they will click accept and move along. So that is how we deal with freight charges. If for whatever reason the freight charges if there's not a line item for freight charges, the buyer will need to enter a line item on the purchase order for freight and then resubmit that to you. So at that point, you could then go in and make the changes on the freight line. So that's the basics for managing orders, which again is creating change orders for purchase orders in order to update prices, quantities, promise dates, and add freight. The next function over here shows manage schedules. At this time, we are not using that function, so no need to address that. The next section is agreements. Agreements, which some of you may have received email notifications of two different types of agreements. One is blanket purchase agreements. Blanket purchase agreements are where we create a catalog of specific items in our system for you as a vendor. These have unique item numbers and descriptions, and they have negotiated pricing. Negotiated price items will not be able to be changed on purchase orders using the function that we just did. What we are asking our vendors to do is to manage their catalog. Blanket purchase agreements are your catalog. If there are price changes to any of the items that are in the catalog, we ask that you make those changes on the blanket purchase agreement, and that will in turn ensure that the prices are correct on purchase orders. So this function here, manage agreements, allows for vendors to manage their catalog. Again, if you have a particular purchase agreement number that you want to work on, you would just enter that here in the agreement field. If you do not know your purchase agreement number immediately, you can just click the search, and it will bring up all blanket purchase agreements and contract purchase agreements that are entered into the system for this vendor. Contract purchase agreements are not anything that needs to be edited by the vendor. They are simply a function that we use within our system to be able to create purchase orders for non-specific items. If you have multiple vendors that you work with within Westgate Resorts, you will likely have multiple blanket purchase agreements. Each buyer should have a blanket purchase agreement created for each of their vendors. If you do not have any specific item numbers in our system, you may not have a blanket purchase agreement. So for processes of test, this vendor only has one purchase agreement in the system, and it's shown right here, PA30055. All purchase agreements begin with the letters PA, just like all purchase orders began with the letters PO. So if I want to make a change to this blanket purchase agreement, again, I would just click on the number, and the system will open that blanket purchase agreement. Now, unfortunately, in this system, I cannot show you how to do the changes, but I will tell you that the process for doing it is exactly the same as what we just did on creating a change order on a purchase order. You would go to Actions and then Edit, and as you will see, I received an error message because there is currently a change order already pending on this blanket purchase agreement. But as I stated, the process for doing this is exactly the same. Actions and then edit. The purchase agreement will open up with all of the line items able to be edited. For example, if I wanted to change the price on line 1, I would click on line 1, click into the price field, and then edit the price here. As you see, because I cannot open a new change order, I cannot change prices at this point. But like I said, the function is exactly the same as changing prices on a purchase order. You would also need to enter a description, just as you did on the previous function at the top, the required field for the description of what it is that you're doing. If you're making price changes, please provide the line item number for the price changes that you are making. For example, if I was changing the price on line 1, I would simply type price change line 1. My suggestion to vendors is to provide this information to the buyer prior to actually making these changes. If the buyers see that a vendor has gone in and made changes on a blanket purchase agreement without prior notification, the odds are that they will either reject the change order on the blanket purchase agreement or not approve it until they talk to the supplier. If the supplier provides this information prior to making the changes, the buyer will already be aware and will easily be able to accept the change order and confirm and send it back to you. Again, as I mentioned before, making changes to pricing on your blanket purchase agreement will ensure that prices are correct on future purchase orders. That will not require you then to go into the manage orders function and change prices on a purchase order. So making sure that your pricing is up to date is definitely a good thing to do. One thing that I will show you quickly, many blanket purchase agreements have a significant number of line items on them. As you see, scrolling through Oracle Fusion can be time consuming, and being able to view all of the data that you're looking for may not be as easy. So you do have the function to export all of the data to Excel for ease of viewing. This icon right here, as I hover over it, you'll notice it says export to Excel. What that would do if you click on it is to actually take all of the line items and all of the data and export it into an Excel spreadsheet, which in my experience is much easier to find information in. If you have decent experience with working with Excel, you know that it has functions in it to actually do searches. So if you're perhaps looking for a particular item number, a manufacturer item number, you could type that into your search and locate the line item on the blanket purchase agreement quickly. Then you could come back to the blanket purchase agreement and quickly locate the item that you need to make adjustments on. I would show you this, but unfortunately, being on a Mac, I don't believe that there is currently not Excel on this computer. So that is the process for making adjustments to blanket purchase agreements, which again, as I'm referring to, is maintaining your catalog. So I'll move on to the next segment, which here is entitled Shipments. The first 4 functions here, manage shipments, create ASN, create ASBN, and upload ASN or ASBN, are functions that will not be utilized in Oracle Fusion. The next 2, view receipts and view returns, will likely be the least utilized functions for our suppliers in Oracle Fusion. The view receipts, which I will click on now, allows for a vendor to go into the system and determine whether or not the purchase order and line items on that purchase order have been electronically received in our system. This does not actually show whether or not the material has physically arrived, but it does show when it gets electronically received. And this function is useful if a vendor is wanting to ensure that the material has been electronically received, because until it is, billing cannot be completed. I kind of say that this is for the vendor who likes to micromanage their orders and keep track of it along every step of the way. If you have a purchase order specifically that you want to look at, you would just enter your purchase order number. As you notice on this header section, there are 3 lines that have, or excuse me, 4 lines that have 2 asterisks next to it: receipt, purchase order, shipment, and item. Whenever you see a group of fields like this that has 2 asterisks next to multiple lines, only one of those needs to be filled in. So here I'm just going to fill in the purchase order number, and I'm going to click search. For purposes of our test database, there was no receiving done on purchase orders except for a very select few that I currently do not have access to, as they were from a different vendor. But if receiving had been completed on this purchase order, you would see down here in the search results, it would show you the receipt date, which is when it was actually physically or electronically received in our system, as well as some other pertinent information to that specific purchase order. Again, this just shows when it was electronically received in our system. The view returns function allows for us to track any returns back through our system. Return could be for a variety of reasons. It could be for a overshipment, it could be for damaged product, it could be for shipment of the incorrect item. If any of these situations occur, the receivers at our properties and at our warehouse will actually electronically return those specific items back into the system. And if there is an RMA issued by the supplier, that RMA information will be entered into the system and it will show up right here. Again, there were no returns done in the test database for Oracle Fusion Supplier Portal. So at this point, I cannot show you what a result for a search would look like. But as you see the different headers for the different columns, you can see receipt, date, organization, the purchase order that it was on, the RMA if there was one, the return date, which is the date that the item was returned back into the system, the item, if there's a supplier item number, the description, and the quantities, and then the reason for the return. Again, hopefully this function will not need to be utilized very often, as we really prefer not to have to worry about any returns. The next section here is consigned inventory. Again, this will not be utilized in Oracle Fusion. That brings us to invoices and payments. This is probably one of the more important sections for our vendors, as this is actually how you will submit your invoices into our system. The first function here is to create an invoice. If you click on the create invoice function, it'll bring up this screen. This is where you will begin to enter the invoice into our system. The first field you'll see here is the identifying PO field. This is actually where you will enter our PO number. This takes me back to the information that I provided you, where it is important that you include the letters PO in your purchase order number. Otherwise, the system will not populate correctly and you will not see any information, and you will not be able to enter an invoice correctly. So in the new system, in the production database, again, all purchase orders begin with the letters PO. For test, I don't necessarily need to worry about that because I have other old purchase orders. So I'm going to enter my purchase order number, and I missed a digit. Sorry. And there's my purchase order that I want to work on, 387773. And when I select that, you'll see that some of the information begins to fill in for us. Supplier site, the address, which should be the remit address. The next couple of fields we don't want you to do anything with. As you see, there are no asterisks over here, so there is no required information. Remit bank account, unique remittance identifier. not necessary information, and our accounts payable department already has all of the information that they need to submit payments to you. Over here on the right hand side, you will see this field that says number, has one asterisk. This is where you will actually enter your specific invoice number. And that is whatever your string of alphanumeric characters is that you use in your system to identify your invoices. I'm just going to randomly make one up. The next field is the date field. This is the field where you will enter the date that appears on your invoice, the creation date of the invoice in the vendor system. This is not the date that the invoice is being entered into our system. So whatever date appears on the invoice is the date that goes in this field. Now, you cannot enter a future date. It either has to be today's date or a past date. So for this exercise, I'm going to enter today's date because I am an efficient accounts receivable clerk and I submit my invoices as soon as I process them. The next field down is the type. This system allows you to submit invoices as well as credit memos. The function is exactly the same, but for today's exercise, we are going to focus on invoices. And you see the currency, of course, is US dollar. And then this next field, description, is not a required field. Your accounting department can utilize this if they have some type of pertinent information that they want to provide to our accounts payable department. I, not being an accountant or working in accounting, I'm not sure exactly what type of information they may want to pass back and forth, but that is there for them if they determine that they need it. And just below that, you will see attachments. This is where you will actually upload the purchase order into our system. You'll see here currently it says that there are no attachments. This plus sign right here is where you will actually go to attach the invoice to this in our system. So once I click on the plus sign, you'll see it comes up with a pop-up screen here, and it will either say here, either choose file or browse. This is exactly how you would go about attaching a document to an email or other type of attachment function. Obviously, every vendor is different in how they do their invoicing, how invoices are stored in your system, the particular file path that you have to find the invoices in. I'm sure your people in accounting or your controller or whomever who handles your billing knows how to find that file in your system. If you are a vendor who handwrites your invoices, you would need to scan that into an electronic file and then attach it to our system at that point. So I'm going to click choose file, and obviously this computer does not have any invoices in it, so I'm just going to choose a random file here. And you see it's got it there now, and then I just click OK. Once I do that, it'll show here that I have now attached that file. This just happens to be a random picture. If you want to view that to make sure you got the right one, you can click on it and it will open that file from your system. The next function that you have to do is you have to identify exactly which items you are going to be billing us for. If you bill 100% on all of your invoices, this function will be very easy for you. If you have a lot of back orders or if you bill partial, this will actually prove to be a little more time consuming. So you need to go down here to the items section, and then you will click on this paper with a green plus sign on it. As you see, I hover over it and it says select and add. I click on that and it will open up a window that displays all of the line items that are on this purchase order. If you are billing complete and you wish to select every line item, it's a very simple process. Click on the first line, scroll down, till you get to the last line, click Shift, and then left click on your mouse. As you see, I've now highlighted all of the line items. So select the first line, scroll to the bottom, press Shift, left click, selects all the line items. It's exactly the same function as you can use in many, many programs. Excel does the same thing when you're selecting multiple lines. If you want to select specific lines, you can use the Control function and click the first line and then Control and select your additional lines. Otherwise, you would have to select them one at a time. For example, I will say I'm going to select line 1. I click Apply. And as you notice, line 1 is no longer available to be selected. I want to select line 5. I click Apply. Line 5 is now gone. If you want to select all line items, if you're billing 100% for this purchase order on this invoice, select all your lines and then click Apply. After you've selected all the lines that you want to bill, click OK. And as you see here now, I have line 5 and line 1 have been selected for billing on this invoice. On the individual lines, if you are not billing 100% for an individual line, as you see here, the quantity field is able to be updated. For example, on line 5, if I am not billing for the full amount of 300, I can change the quantity. For this exercise, I'm going to say that I'm billing 150 of the available 300 to be billed. And if I scroll over here, it'll show the extended amount for that line item. If I change this back to 300, you will see that the price changes to the full price amount for that line item. So here is where you would change quantity on a specific line item. You select your line first, then you can make the changes to the quantity. For the purposes of this exercise, I'm going to state that I'm going to bill full for each of these line items. Once you've corrected any quantities, scroll down and ensure that your total here, less tax, matches the subtotal on your purchase order. If you have a freight line that you want to bill, and I'm going to say for this exercise, I do. I'm going to go back to select a line. I'm going to find my freight line, which is here, typically at the bottom of the invoice, or excuse me, at the bottom of the purchase order. And I'm going to click Apply. And I'm going to click OK. Now, I'm not doing full on this one, so let's just say I only want to bill $500 of the available freight. The way we typically enter our freight lines on our purchase order is to actually enter the dollar amount under the quantity. That will allow for you to do partial billing on freight. So if you are entering a change order to a purchase order and you're changing your freight cost, my suggestion is to change it under the quantity, not the price. That will allow you to do partial billing on freight if necessary. If you do it on the price, as you see here, you do not have the ability to change the price on your invoicing. You would have to enter a partial decimal of a full quantity of 1. If the quantity was 1 and your price was what you had your full amount under, you would have to enter a percentage of 1, which would, of course, require doing some math. So once again, if my item total down here matches my invoice, then you are all set. At that point, you can submit your invoice. Click Submit, and let's hope that I don't have an error message. Okay, I do have an error message. The reason for this is in our test database, not all of the tax rules had been entered and verified. In our production database, that has been corrected. So you see this error message that I received here. Most likely you should not receive this error message in our production system. In this case I did, but for the purposes of this exercise, that's okay. So the next thing I want to do is allow me to backtrack. The next function here is create invoice without a PO. This is not an available function. Westgate Resorts does not accept invoices without a viable purchase order number associated with it. In the past, there have been instances where this has occurred, but due to the nature of the new system, this is not a possibility any longer. Any invoices submitted without a purchase order are not able to be billed. They're not able to be matched. So do not utilize this function. It is not something that is available. All right, so the next thing here is view invoices. This will allow you to view any and all invoices that have been submitted in our system for you as a vendor. If you have a specific invoice number that you want to research, you can enter that. If you have a specific purchase order number that you want to research, you can enter that. Otherwise, you could just enter your supplier name and you could click search, and that will literally provide every invoice that we have in our system. For the purposes of this exercise, I'm just going to enter a specific invoice number, and I'm going to click search. And as you see, this is the one that I just created. If you notice here, the invoice status says that it is in process. That is due to the unfortunate tax error that we saw when I was submitting the invoice. There are multiple different status that the invoice could be in depending on the location of it as it processes through our system in accounts payable. It could be pending, it could be on hold, it could be pending validation, it could be paid. So those are mostly self-explanatory. As you see here, the different columns provide different information. It provides you with the invoice number, the invoice date, the type of invoice, the referencing purchase order number, the supplier name, supplier site, which is really a function only within our system, the unpaid amount, the invoice amount. Obviously, if the unpaid amount has 0, the invoice has been paid in full. Whenever a payment is processed on an invoice, it will reference a payment number right here. For the purposes of this exercise, we will refer to that as the check number. Of course, this could be an electronic payment number. It could be a check number. It could be a credit card payment reference number, whatever the case may be. So that will show you any information that is available on that invoice. This is a good function for a couple of reasons. If a particular accounts receivable clerk was entering a whole host of invoices at a particular time and just wanted to verify that they did actually enter a particular invoice, they can search here in this function to determine whether or not they actually finished that invoice, or did not submit or did submit. Can also allow a sales representative to determine based on the purchase order number if an invoice has been submitted based on a specific purchase order number. They may not necessarily have access to the invoices readily, the invoice numbers, if that's controlled by the accounting department. So it will allow a sales rep or someone performing that function to research whether or not invoices have been submitted for a particular purchase order. So there's a couple different things you can do there. So once we have a payment number, if a payment number has been populated in this field, we can proceed to the next function, which is to view payments. I don't have any payment numbers that I can enter in here at this time. No payments were submitted to this supplier in the test database, but if I did, you can see the different columns that the information would provide. It would provide you, again, it would show the payment number, the date of the payment, the type of payment, the invoice number that payment was made on, the supplier site, payment amount, the payment status, and the remit to account. So if you are looking to get information on a specific payment, this is the function that you would utilize to do that. So again, you would go to your invoices, you would find your payment number, bring that payment number here, and then you could see the information on the payment. If you wanted to look at all payments that have been submitted to this supplier, you can enter just the supplier name in here, and then you could actually view all of your payments. You can add additional information if you're looking for a specific payment amount. If you're looking for a specific payment date, you can add that additional information into your search criteria. The next section, negotiations, is not something that will be utilized at this time. And that brings us to the last section, which is the supplier profile. The supplier profile is your information for your use in our system. The system allows for multiple users to be available for each vendor. Those contacts are administered by the supplier. Whoever is determined to be the administrator on the account for a particular supplier can request additional user accounts. This is helpful if you have multiple people in your company who perform various functions. You have a sales rep who may want access to everything. You may have someone who enters orders for you. You have an order center, and that is the function of those people, is the data entry of the actual purchase orders. You would allow them to have an individual login. You may have an accounting clerk who is the person who's responsible for submitting invoices. You may have an owner who wants to see everything. You can have as many profiles for individual users in the system as you need for your purposes. I'm going to go ahead and click on this first one, Yolanda Medina, and this vendor is the main point of contact for this vendor. She is the administrative contact. There will always be three pieces of information: the first name, last name, and email address that will be entered in the system. All of the information over here on the right, as well as any information on the left that you wish to enter, you are able to do so. Here you will see contact addresses. This will display all of the addresses that we have in our system. This is not important for us. This does not affect anything with regards to supplier addresses in our system for use by Westgate personnel. Accounts payable has all of their remit to information. Purchasing has the information that they require. So this is just simply for your own use. And then down here at the bottom, you'll see that the user account status is active. If you need to deactivate accounts, the system administrator can do that. And then it shows all of the roles and responsibilities for this individual user account. The system administrator has the ability to limit the various roles that each person can have. As you see, there's like an accounts receivable specialist, there's a self-service clerk, a sales rep, customer service representative, and it shows the description of what functions they have. Again, you can limit those functions for individual users. So I'm going to go back to the main screen here for this supplier profile. This is the process for adding additional user accounts. This button right here shows create. It's a little piece of paper with a little gold and red little plus sign here. Click on create, and it opens up a blank contact form. Again, the minimum required is first name, last name, and email address. If you attempt to submit a request for a new user account, you'll see here, if I check it, it says email is required when requesting a user account. The reason for this is that is the login for a new user account. The email address is how we deliver their user account information to them, and it will be their login ID for when they access the system. If you want to allow multiple supplier or multiple users to access the same login, that is acceptable. That is for you to determine. You can utilize perhaps a generic email account that multiple people have access to. We have some of our vendors who have created a specific email account that is solely for the use of Westgate Resorts. For example, westgate@yourcompanyname.com, and your multiple people can have access to it, including order processors or accounts receivables clerks, and they could utilize the same login information. Again, some vendors have multiple order processors or people that they want to receive purchase orders, you can set up a individual email account and then maybe create some rules for that email account that all emails incoming to that account forward automatically to multiple people. Again, that's for you to determine. So you would enter first name, last name, email. Again, any of the other information is at your discretion. You check the request user account, and then you would click submit. we are asking that there is only one administrative contact per vendor. This is the person who will have full rights access to make changes on user accounts. If you have multiple administrators to your account, it could potentially create some issues with multiple people making changes unnecessarily or incorrectly. And at that point, it would require system maintenance on our part to actually do some reset, which can be a time-consuming process. If you are choosing to give administrative rights to a new user, you would simply check the administrative contact box, and that would assign administrative rights to this new user. That is how you actually create a new user profile in the system. At this point, that is all that we have for the different functions in the system. And if anyone has any questions at this point, we are asking that you enter them into the chat function for the webinar. I have also provided my email address at the very beginning of the chat for any questions that do not get resolved during this time, and I will enter it again before the end of the video. One other thing I wanted to make you aware of for reference purposes, you all should have received a link to a YouTube channel for Westgate Purchasing that includes several videos that we have created. There is a copy of one of these webinar sessions available on that YouTube channel. Please utilize that as a reference. All of the information that was gone over today is in that video. It's approximately 55 minutes long, and it goes in the same sequence as what I went over today. So if you want to try to fast forward through, you can. I do have one question here from Tamara. It says, is there a specific file type required? I believe you're referencing on the file type required for submitting invoices. To my knowledge, there is not a specific file type required. My suggestion to you would be that it would be in PDF. That would not allow for any edits to be made by anyone to your invoices. But no, as far as I know, there is no specific file type required. It could be a JPEG, it could be a PDF, it could be an Excel file, it could be a Word file, whatever type of file your system creates. As far as I know, I have not heard any information from accounts payable that any particular file types are not acceptable. So I hope that answered your question there. I'm not seeing any additional questions that have been entered into the chat at this time. So at this point, I'm going to just provide my email address again. If anyone has any other specific questions that they did not get answered during this webinar. And I hope that this has been informative to you. I hope that this has answered some of the pending questions that your team has. I did just now receive another question from Lisa. She's asking how POs will come across. POs will be submitted via email. Some of you may have already begun to receive those from our system. The emails will actually come from your buyer's name. Previously in our system, emails came from a non-specific email address. I believe it was purchasing_oracle@wgresorts.com. That is not the case. The email address that is in our system, excuse me, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. The emails will actually look like they come from the buyer. So, example, any emails that come from me would say that they are from Eric Johnson. Those emails will contain a zip file, and within that zip file, it has a PDF of the purchase order. Lisa has asked, if I'm out, will I get her out of office to resend to a different person? Yes, that has already occurred. I have received out of office responses from some of my vendors when the emails have been sent to them. Due to the nature of the way these emails are being sent, that they are actually being sent from the buyers and not from a generic email address per se like the old system did, we actually do get your out of office response. So hopefully everyone utilizes an out-of-office response if they are the one who typically receives orders from us. If you don't have an out-of-office response on, there is no way to determine for us that you have not received the purchase order, and it will just sit and wait until you come back or until we attempt to contact you. Let's see, Barbara has a question here. Let me read it real quick. Barbara, I think that perhaps you might be a vendor who works under contract. I believe that Kay Perez is the person that you typically work with, and Kay will have a different set of parameters that her purchase orders and contracts will work under. And my suggestion to you is to contact her directly to determine the process for that type of billing. Barbara's due.
Barbara, is it from Diamond?
No, different Barbara. Barbara Walsh.
Okay.
So AIA. Okay. And any other vendors that have progressive billing, my suggestion to you is to contact your individual buyers directly to address any questions that you have regarding specific instances of invoices that are not directly correlated to standard purchase orders. I hope that, Barbara, I hope that answered your question. So you have a follow-up. Yes, in order to bill back orders, you would just create a new invoice for the back order when you're invoicing for it and reference the same purchase order number. And again, you would just change your quantity on the specific line item if it's a partial ship on a particular line item. If you had an initial shipment of a percentage of the order and then you have a fulfillment shipment for the balance of the order, you would just change you will see that the available quantity to be billed will only be for what's left, what has not been billed up to that point for back orders. All right, well, at this point, I am not seeing any additional questions. I'm going to provide my email address one more time. So if anyone has any questions that have not been resolved during the course of this webinar, please email them to me. And I will either address them directly or I will get the information or the person to you who can answer that information for you. So there's my email address one more time. For everybody, I'll give you just a moment to copy that if you need. And I hope that, again, I hope this session was informative for you and that we have provided a little bit of additional information for how this system will work moving forward. I mentioned at the beginning that the login information, the login credentials for our suppliers is imminent. We have just about completed all of the testing and troubleshooting that we needed to on the supplier portal, and the login information should be coming out momentarily. I know a couple of vendors that received it last night who are doing some end user testing for us. So as long as all goes well with that, you should definitely look to receive the login information in the next day or two. If that is not going to be the case, we will provide that information if we determine that we need to delay that distribution. Lisa, one of my particular vendors, has just said that she's received it. I will let you know that the login information will be going to whomever is listed on your supplier account as the point of contact. For most of you, it will more than likely be the sales representative or the person who processes orders for us. So if you have not received specific login information, but you are not the person who typically is the point of contact for the vendor, either email the buyer that typically works with you as a vendor or contact that person within your company who you happen to know is the traditional point of contact. So I hope that, again, I hope this has been informative. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and end this webinar session. If anyone within your company has a need to attend a webinar, we are having an additional session on Thursday, this Thursday, the I'm sorry. What is the date? Anyway, this Thursday, Thursday of this week at 10 o'clock Eastern Time. And also, as I mentioned before, a copy of the webinar is available on our YouTube channel for Westgate Purchasing. So I hope everyone has a great day, and thank you so much for attending.
Rocky?